Dear friends, I am writing after parashat Achrimot Kedoshim. And again, as in many parshiot in Vayikra, the Haftara, what we read for the prophets, appears to contradict the Torah portion. And there are quite a few examples of this in Vayikra. I think I gave some already. And this is another example. As you know, Parashat Kedoshim starts off, Kodim Kedoshim to you. You shall be holy, for I am God is holy. I've also said in the parasha, very often the beginning of the parsha and the end of the parsha directly reflect each other. And Kedoshim, this is obvious because the final two, in the final two verses of Kedoshim, it says, V'yitem li Kedoshim, you shall be unto me holy, for I, God, am holy. V'avdil etchem min ha'amim, and I shall separate you from the nations, liyot li, to be for me. So, you're supposed to be holy, God will separate you. It sounds like the idea of the chosen people. And that's what, more or less, how the parsha ends, and there's one other verse after that. Whereas the Haftarah, which you normally read whether it's Kedoshim or Achremot, but that's another discussion, is taken from chapter 9 in Amos. And chapter 9, now Amos is a prophet who is prophesying particularly for the northern kingdom of Israel, which is the problematic kingdom, which eventually will be exiled by Sancherib, the king of Assyria, in 722 before the Common Era. And Amos says to them, Halo kivnei kushim atem li bnei Israel. You are like Ethiopians, says God says to Israel. Because after all, Israel I took out of Egypt, and I took the Philistines after Kaftor, and I took the Arameans out of Kir. So you're no different than the other nations. That's a simple meaning of the text. You're no different than the other nations. Halo kivnei kushim, a random nation from Africa, Kush, which at times was a large empire, at times wasn't. So you're just like them, and you're just like the Philistines, and you're just like the Arameans, etc. There are other interpretations too here. What does it mean? Why specifically the Kushites? Some people say just like there were dark nations, so they're distinguished, so the Jewish people are distinguished from the nations, but I'm not so sure that that's the meaning here. And some people say just like there was slavery in Africa, you're like my slaves, another possibility. But the simple meaning is that just like there are many nations that God helped and took them out from servitude into freedom, so God did the same with the people of Israel. So don't think you're so special. And then it continues. For the eyes of God are on this sinful kingdom, meaning the northern nation, the northern kingdom of Israel. And it will be destroyed from the surface of the earth. But I will not destroy all of the house of Jacob, says God. So even if I destroy the northern kingdom, it won't be all of the children of Israel. And then it continues, by the sword, all the sinners of my people will die, all those who don't think that this evil could happen to them. And then it continues again, but then I shall reset up the fallen sukkah of David, meaning Jerusalem and the temple. I remember David is the southern kingdom. Vegadarti pirtzehen, and I shall close up the holes. Barisotabakim, and its ruins I shall rebuild. Uvenitia kimeolam, and it shall be rebuilt just as times of old, etc., etc. And I shall bring back my people Israel, and the cities which were desolate shall be filled and settled, and they shall plant again, and they shall plant vineyards and drink the wine, and have special gardens, and eat the fruit, and I shall plant them on their land, and they shall not be banished from their land ever again, says the Lord God. So this is a little bit of a complicated chapter in Amos, but it starts off as if the Jews are not something special. Doesn't that contradict the second to last verse of Kedoshim? I want to quote this something that the late Rabbi Chaim Druckman once said, who was my teacher in my younger days. He used to say about Korach, who rebelled really against Moses and Aaron. He said, if Korach would have said, Kol ha'ida kula kadosh, kula kadosha, which means the whole assembly, the whole collective of Israel is holy, he would have been correct. But what Korach said is that every individual Jew is holy. Holiness is a level you have to attain. And that's why the Torah says, Kedoshim to you. Make sure that you're holy. If everyone was already de facto holy, then why do you have to say it? Because you have to achieve that level. So that was Korach's mistake. Individuals have to achieve the level. The Jewish people as a collective, yes, is holy, but the individual has to achieve the level. So it's the same thing here. When the Torah says in this parasha, Kedoshim to you, be holy, it's because the individual has to work on themselves to reach that level. So, and that's why in the book of Amos, God is saying to the people of the northern kingdom, don't think that just because I chose the people of Israel, that I can't punish you. If you're going to go off on the wrong way, you can be thrown into exile, into galut. You have to follow God and follow God's law in order to stay in the land. And then, fortunately, that's exactly what happens with the northern kingdom, and later on, even with the southern kingdom in 586 of the Common Era. But God was a little bit more compassionate with the southern kingdom, because instead of being banished all over the place, they were all taken to Babylonia, and there they spent the 70 years in exile. So here we have an idea where the Torah portion is the Haftara, trying to put limits on this concept of Kedusha, because the Kedusha of the Jewish people is for the collective, but the individuals have to strive towards Kedusha, and that's what the parsha is saying. Now, I'd like to add one more idea here from the book of Amos on this very significant verse, which we also use on the Sukkot holiday in Birkat HaMazon and the blessing after the meal. On that day, I shall rebuild the fallen sukkah of David. Akim, I shall erect anew the falling sukkah of David. Now you have here Akim, I shall erect anew is in the future tense. The falling sukkah of David is in present tense. V'gardarti pirtzehem, and I shall close up the holes, meaning in the walls. Now, gadarti is past tense, but the vav makes a future tense. I'm just saying, if you take away that vav, which in Hebrew is called the vav, which changes the tense, you have here future, present, past. Meaning the future is going to the present and to the past in order to get back to the future again. That's a discussion by itself, because in biblical narrative, when a person is going forward in time, they're looking back to their roots. How do I know that? Because in the book of Isaiah, the term achor, which means the back, refers to the future. Mi bachem yarei Hashem yakshiv v'yishma le'achor. Who among you fears God? May they listen and may they hearken and listen backwards. And backwards means to the future. There are other places like that too. I'll show you the exact quote on that one. Mibachem Yirei Hashem, which is an important verse too. So let me show you the again, it's Isaiah 43, and it says, Mi bachem yazin zot, who among you shall listen to this? Yakshiv, will pay attention, again, a word to listen. Vishma le'achor, and shall hear what will happen. And that is, the term of what will happen is in the back. That's Isaiah 42:23. Another proof of this, the future is actually called back, is because in the biblical Hebrew, when you say the past, you say lefanim. Like in the book of Ruth, lefanim zot b'Yisrael, or the book of Samuel, lefanim zot b'Yisrael, then a Navi was called Ro'eh. And Ruth, the last chapter of Ruth, lefanim zot b'Yisrael, ala gulav ala tmura. When a person did a transaction, they would do it this way. Lefamim means it used to be. But lefanim comes with the face. So it used to be is where your face is looking. That means that the way biblical history works, you're looking to the past, but you're moving backwards towards the future. Because the future is called the back, and past is called the countenance, the face, the front. Because you're always looking to where you came from. In order to understand what is behind you, which you cannot see because the future can't be seen, it's called the back. But you can get an inkling by looking back. That's why history is so important in the Jewish tradition. In the Bible, it says in Parashat Ha'azinu, it says, Zechor Yom HaOlam, remember the days of old. Zechor Yom HaOlam, Binu Shnot Dor Vador, understand each generation. Shalavicha v'yagedcha, ask your father, he will tell you. Zekeinecha v'yomru lach, the elders, and they will tell you. So there's a great importance attached to understanding history in the Jewish tradition. So we're constantly looking back where we came from in order to understand which way we are going. So that's the way I just mentioned this with this verse that goes from future to present to past. Now, but again, there's something else that this can be explained in this verse. In that day, I will resurrect the Sukkah of David. The Sukkah of David refers to, of course, the temple. Jerusalem, the temple. It's a Sukkah, it's called falling, because it didn't fall 100%, even though it was destroyed, because the people are still there. They can come back and resurrect it. But it's falling. It's in a bad way. V'gadarti pirtzehen, I shall close up the holes, tavakim, and its ruins I shall rebuild, so it be built as in days of old. In my opinion, also, when you build up, it's not just building the building, it's building and rebuilding the people after the galut, after the exile. So I think Amos here is giving also a pattern for how do you rebuild a people after so many years of exile. It's an education system. And it starts with Akimatsu Katavid. I'm going to resurrect the Sukkah of David. But then he says, I'm going to fill up the holes and build up the ruins. So how do you resurrect it first and then fill up the holes? But it means I will resurrect the Sukkah of David, which is falling. I'm going to do first something in general to bring back the spirit of the people, which means in education, before you can get anywhere, you have to enthuse. You have to make the people enthusiastic about what they're doing. You have to inspire them. If you can inspire the generation, then you can get it to rebuild. That's called to resurrect the Sukkah of David, to give something inspiring and people want to stand up on their feet. And then you can fill up the holes, the lacunas, the things they didn't know from before. And after you fill up the holes, which are all the mistakes that they were told from the past, then everything that was ruined, you can rebuild, because you can rebuild from the start and explain to them all the mistakes now, not just particular things which they understood wrong, because some of the basic things have to be re-understood. Because in order to have new Jewish life in the land of Israel, things have to be seen differently. It's the same Judaism, but it has to be looked at from a different angle. It was Hillel Zeitlin who wrote about Rav Kook. He said about Rav Kook that Rav Kook, in a sense, didn't say anything new about Judaism, but he took all of Judaism and looked at it from a different angle from a vantage point that nobody else looked at it. So everything seemed to be new. Torat Eretz Yisrael, the Judaism of the land of Israel, is going to be like that. It'll be the same Judaism, but it'll be from a different vantage point. It'll blend into national life here, and it'll blend into the environment here, and it'll seem very new, but it will be the old which is being refurbished or basically renewed in our ancient land. And therefore, there'll be a lot of profound ideas that will come out that were not noticed beforehand. And all this I see here in the book of Amos in the hints talking about the temple. I wish everybody peace and quietude. Shalom, shalom.